Hello and welcome to Local Time. This is Jessica Eise. And joining us tonight is the Executive Director of the Arlington Food Assistance Center and a volunteer. So thank you so much, Charlie, I believe Charlie Meng and Karen Cogswell, to both of you for joining us. And so what I'd like to start with, Charlie, as the Executive Director, if you could just give us an overview of what Arlington Food Assistance Center is, or AFAC as you call it.
Right. Well, AFAC provides supplemental groceries to Arlington residents in need. Right now, that means we're serving about 1,671 families on average each week. These are residents of Arlington County. They're our neighbors in need. And we provide a balanced menu of nutritious and healthy food items. A lot of that is donated to us, but a lot of it we also buy ourselves. So
I think what I'd like to do is start just with a broad question about hunger here in Arlington, because Arlington County is an affluential county here. And so I think a lot of people might not be even aware that there really is this need here. Is this a big need?
Well, I think it's a tremendous need in our community. Yes, we are one of the most affluent counties in the United States. Yet, on a weekly basis, we're seeing 1,600 plus families. That's almost 3,500 individuals. A third of those individuals are children under the age of 18. These are individuals who really do not have the resources to feed themselves or their families, even in one of the most affluent counties in the United States. So we try to address that issue.
Mm-hmm. Karen, when we were talking earlier, you had mentioned that you've been volunteering for a year now with AFAC, and you had come from California, right?
Right.
So what were you doing there as a volunteer?
I had actually been on a number of nonprofit boards, and one of the organizations that I did work with, I wasn't on their board, was Second Harvest Food Bank. And I knew the executive director there and got to know what the need was, again, in a very wealthy section of the country, and ironically in California, right where the agricultural centers are, where so much is produced, and yet families in need, probably a lot of those families working in the fields. So I became interested in feeding people at this most basic level at that time.
So I think a lot of us think of these wealthier, more affluent counties as really not having that need. And when you say that it's a supplemental AFAC, it's a supplement grocery. What do you mean when you say that? What differs from other organizations then?
Well, what I mean by supplemental is that we can provide a good portion of what a family needs on a weekly basis. We cannot provide everything. An average family of 4 a week needs about 142 pounds worth of food. We're providing about 40 pounds each week. Now, what we try to provide is items that families really do need: milk, eggs, chicken, fish, hot dogs, and then some staple items, and then a choice of other items that have been donated to us. We work on what's called a choice model. We don't give you a bag of food as most food pantries in the United States do. We allow you to shop for what you and your family like and will consume.
And where does the food come from? How do you collect this food? Is it on a donation basis?
Well, many different ways. We run a lot of food drives. Just this past weekend, the Boy Scout food drive was taking place, and that brought us close to 54,000 pounds of really necessary food stuff. The second place we get it is from all of the grocery stores in Arlington County. We have 3 drivers whose first task it is in the morning to go around to the grocery stores and pick up what they're donating to us. We also have volunteers who come to AFAC at 10:30 in the evening, because then they pick up from Trader Joe's. And that's another aspect of what we do, is all of the volunteers like Karen who help AFAC do what we do. And without those volunteers, we could not do all of the things that we do.
Sure, I can only imagine. Karen, what do you do with AFAC? How often do you work with them?
I work at least once a week, and started me in the warehouse. So I was just kind of pointed at a big box of things and said, okay, 4 oranges go in each bag, you know, so you bag things up. And then today was kind of exciting because for the first time AFAC is doing a Tuesday evening distribution because the need is so great that it was difficult for families that work regular working hours to get there either on Thursdays or Saturdays. So they're doing one tonight. Don't know how many people are going to show up, but we were stocking all the shelves, which it makes it look like a grocery store. It really is the most convenient and easiest way, and empowers people to pick what they know that they're going to use. I think it was explained to me in the beginning when I got there that if you just handed a family a box of food, there could be things in there they've never ever seen. So that would just get thrown out.
And when you get these, so you have these different types of food on the shelves, and say there are things that people aren't familiar with, different types of vegetables or things that they've just never cooked with before. Is there any instruction on how to use these items?
That's where the cooking demonstrations come in. So a couple times a week, the nutritionist on staff has gone into the warehouse and seen, are there a lot of collard greens or kale? Or I remember one time last year there were packaged soup mixes, but you know, it wasn't really clear how you were supposed to prepare that. So she'd come up with simple recipes that we could make in a electric skillet, because again, some of these clients don't have stoves. And we would make them during distribution and hand them out to people so they could taste it and start interacting with them about, oh, what did you use and what do you have? Could I use this? And it's just a wonderful, warming, welcoming way to get people familiar with some things that they may not be.
Right, I think I might appreciate some of those recipes for kale. So I have no idea how to cook kale.
We've got a recipe book, as a matter of fact. It's coming out in Spanish and English shortly.
Oh, great. That's great that you have that bilingual aspect. Do you find that you have a lot of people who come in with bilingual needs?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
You know, that's one of the great things about our volunteers. Many of them do speak Spanish, and we try to make sure that the folks that are on our front desk, where everybody has to sign in first, almost all of them are bilingual. We also, interestingly, have a growing population of Russian immigrants, Ethiopians, and most recently, a large number of Mongolians that are coming to us. A lot of those individuals are certainly documented, but we also serve the undocumented. You know, our belief is that if you're hungry and in Arlington County, you should not go without food, and that's our simple direction.
Right. And so the impression that I'm getting is that you're working, really striving to provide these people in need with a balanced diet, with food that's really serving their nutritional needs. Because I know that there is often a disconnect in people's minds because they think of obesity and they think, how can someone have food need if they're obese?
Right.
Can you comment on that?
Well, you know, the typical thought about hunger is that when somebody's hungry, they lose weight and get thin. But in the United States, in most of the developing countries, the problem is that they go for high-calorie, low-cost food items. Here in the United States, macaroni and cheese is one of those items. It's very filling, so it's satisfying, and it's easy and it's cheap to buy that for your kids. They'll be happy, they like it, but it contains a lot of salt, a lot of sugar, and a lot of fat, all things that lead to childhood obesity, diabetes issues, and other health issues. And that's also compounded in the elderly. Many of the elderly will go to a fast food restaurant buy something off the dollar menu. That's very cheap, and on a fixed income, that's very important. But again, it is high sodium, high fat, and high sugar, all leading to arterial problems, high blood pressure, and late onset diabetes.
Sure. So AFAC is trying to do the right thing the right way, even though it's probably not the easiest way of doing it.
It's certainly not the easiest, but what we're trying to do is help people, whether it's a young family or an elderly couple, make better decisions about the food that they eat. And hopefully by the menu we give them, we can help them make those better decisions and eat better.
And this is where the food demonstrations come into play, I imagine, so that you're teaching people how to use these foods so that they're not intimidated by it, so they feel like they have the capacity and that they're empowered to make the right food choices. Have you, so in your time over the last year volunteering here, do you encounter people? Are they open to the idea of cooking these new things?
Well, that's what I love about doing the cooking demonstrations, because they're there for distribution, which it sounds like the United Nations in there. It's just wonderful with all the languages. And if you're cooking and you're handing things out, it gives you a way to start talking and a way to connect with people. And everybody has their food stories. So people will come up and tell me, oh, this is how I make it, and in our country we use these types of ingredients, and if I have them there, if I'm doing another batch, I'll mix it up and say, is this how you remember it? So yes, they and most of them take the recipes. We have them all printed out that day, and a lot of them will take it. So it is a way to try to get them not to be intimidated by trying some of these things.
And so I have to ask, because some of us, our culinary skills are not quite as advanced as others. So if we wanted to give back and say we're not master chefs, what would you recommend as different ways for people to volunteer and give back to AFAC?
Well, we've got plenty of opportunities, but our opportunities are hands-on opportunities. These are packaging in our warehouse. We certainly need early morning assistance with our daily distributions. We've got a distribution 6 mornings a week. We can always use people there. We try to provide as many volunteer activities as possible. We've got a young professionals group that will come in and bag chicken in the evening. That's not one of our best occupations that we provide.
That's why young professionals are doing it.
They do, and we've got a very dedicated team of chicken baggers. They're very proud of their activities.
Not the most glorious title, but it works.
Not at all. But I was thinking today with one of my staff members, I think that there may be 4 hours each day when there is not a volunteer opportunity at AFAC. I mentioned we've got volunteer teams who pick up at Panera Bread at 11 o'clock in the evening. There is a group that picks up from two Trader Joe's at 11:30 in the evening, and they pick up a vehicle at AFAC, drive to those stores, pick up what those stores are donating, and oftentimes that can be as much as 1,000 or 2,000 pounds, and then bring it back to the warehouse and actually put it in the refrigerators. So that's 2 hours of time
and that's labor. That's physical labor.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. It's not an easy job, and frankly, I don't know why they do it at midnight each day. I wonder what they do during the day.
I was going to say, those are really, God bless them.
Exactly.
Where do you draw from? Who are these volunteers?
We draw from a lot of the churches, a lot of the schools, and from a network of volunteers that we already have here in Arlington. We've got a distribution at Clarendon United Methodist on Saturday mornings. And I was there about 6 months ago, And the guy that runs that, who has been running it for maybe 8 years by now, introduced me to this young girl who was the last line in about 3 generations of their parents, those parents and their kids, and now their grandkids volunteering all at AFAC. You know,
wow.
and it was really, and this was the last one. The family had finally run out of kids.
Well, you know,
So,
as life goes, maybe they'll make some more.
right.
So.
And that's one of the really fun things about
Sure.
AFAC and what we try to do in Arlington County. Our second mission really is to encourage volunteerism.
And speaking of volunteerism, Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit of what your story is? I mean, we heard from you earlier that you came from California, but what did you do? What do you do during the rest of your hours?
I know. Well, I'm lucky enough to be retired. I was in the mortgage business and financial services for 35 years in California. So when I moved here, I got to retire. And so there are a number of us that are retired that work there. There's one couple that are on my usual shift, and she was a home caregiver all of her career, and he was a long haul truck driver. And now in their retirement, they motor on over, you know, from 1 to 3 on Tuesdays and volunteer together and bicker and laugh and joke, and you know, and they're just wonderful. And there was one woman in today, and she had volunteered sporadically, but she couldn't stand for very long. She has a heart condition, so no problem. You know, they found something to do that she could do sitting down, and you know, all abilities and all tolerances, and you know, I don't know about the chicken bagging, but are welcome, and right. It's very inclusive. I have made good friends there just in the short amount of time I've been there, and it's the best part of my week. I just love it.
How many hours a week do you volunteer?
It depends on if I'm doing any special projects or doing the cooking demonstrations, but at least 2 hours a week. I'm now back on the committee that's heading up the Empty Bowls. This will be our second one. Event that's happening Super Bowl Sunday. I think it's February 2nd. And this is where a number of potters in the area donated their efforts and their talents and their pots. And I think we had about 140 pots, soup bowls that were made. And so they were gorgeous. I mean, they were absolutely showroom ready. And so it was after services on a Sunday, and for $25, people paid. They got to pick out their bowl. And then they got soup. We had a number of restaurants donate soups, and they got their bowl of soup, and we had breads, and people baked cookies and things for dessert, and you know, coffee and all that. And that was held Super Bowl Sunday, and it was I think we sold every ticket. We actually opened it up to more, and we're going to do more this year. But it was a wonderful event, and people were walking around with those bowls like it was the biggest decision in their life. And some made little bowls for little kids, and they were just clutching them to their chests. It was just absolutely adorable. So it was a wonderful event.
What a unique fundraising idea. Who came up with that?
I think that it's something that has been done in other areas before, but there was one woman who's a volunteer who's a potter, and she just, you know, kind of took the bull by the horns and got a lot of people to donate, and voila.
That's great. So something, you know, you volunteer several hours a week, and for other people who are interested in volunteering, what's the best way for them to go about it? How can they reach out? Who do they contact?
Well, we've got 2 volunteer coordinators that can be reached by phone at 703-845-8486. But the easiest way is to go onto our website, www.afac.org.
So that's www.afac.org.
Correct.
Okay, great.
You can go on there. There's a tab for volunteerism, volunteering, and you can just go there. You can see the schedule that's of volunteer opportunities. You can fill out a form, and then that just sets the whole process in motion. You pick the time when you can make it, and show up at that time. We'll take almost anybody at almost any time. If you stand around too long at AFAC, you will be volunteered.
Are there any age limits? Too young? Too old? Who knows?
Yes, under 14, we ask you to have a parent present or a parent sign a hold harmless agreement. And then I must say there is another age under which, little kids can't volunteer. But we also have a family bagging night on the second Monday of each month. And we'll have, you can sign up for that, and you can bring your very young kids, as long as they're accompanied by parents, and they can begin to understand what volunteering is all about.
So speaking of children, you mentioned earlier a statistic that really stuck with me, and that's about 30% of the people that you feed through AFAC are children themselves. I think what a lot of us just ask ourselves is, how does that happen?
It's very easy. It's a family in need that has a child, a son or a daughter or two. They've fallen on difficult times. And they're in our community. They may be here because we have good school systems. They may be doubling up in apartments. But they're people in our community who do jobs, very important jobs in our community. These are grocery store clerks and stockroom folks. They're folks that work at restaurants that we go to all of the time. Right up and down here in Clarendon. I don't know how many restaurants are there, but all of their kitchens are operated by folks who are unfortunately often our clients. I go to one of the Harris Teeters here in Arlington County, and every time I walk in, there's a lady behind the deli counter who yells out my name. She's one of our Tuesday morning clients. So these are people right here in our community.
And they're people that are working.
Yes, quite often. They're making oftentimes minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. At $7.25 an hour, to pay the average one-bedroom apartment rent here in Arlington County would require you to work 44 hours each week.
And that's just to pay your rent?
That's just to pay your rent, okay? That's a staggering amount. So the minimum wage really isn't going very far. And oftentimes, these individuals don't have a full-time schedule either, and certainly no benefits. So that's why, they're having 1, 2, 3 jobs.
And even
both
with
parents,
that, they're barely making by.
Exactly.
Barely making by.
Right, right. And then, of course, we have a lot of the elderly who are living on fixed incomes, where they may have bought a house here in Arlington, paid off the mortgage over the years, but now are living on Social Security and or a small retirement account. And things aren't meeting any longer. And those are our grandparents. That's who these people are, but they're living in our community. They're just not seen as much as, they're not in the restaurants, but they're living among us.
These are all integral members of our community, the elderly, those who work in food service or other positions. Or I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that with the economic downturn that there's been an increase in food need?
Yes. Right before the economic downturn, we were serving about 500 families a week. At the peak of the economic downturn, that rose to close to 1,771 families.
Wow, so it more than tripled. Or
yes.
No, it approximately tripled.
263% increase.
Right.
In a very small number of years. Now that has dropped off since, and at AFAC we have added some new distribution sites, reaching out to folks that we have not been able to serve in the past, and trying to bring food to locations that are close to those individuals' residents so they don't have to spend time off from a job or whatever to travel to South Arlington, where our main site is located.
Sure. Well, Charlie, Karen, I really wanted to thank you, both of you, for joining us. We're going to wrap up here, but again, if you could just tell us what's the best way for members of Arlington County to volunteer?
The best way is to go online to our website, afac.org.
Okay, great. So thank you. And I want to thank you all for joining us here on Local Time to hear Charlie and Karen talk about Arlington Food Assistance Center. And again, if you are interested in volunteering or helping any way, www.afac.org. Great, and have a nice day.